Alright, my team's looking pretty good. All I need now to top it off is a Ghost and Rock type, and we're good to go. Let's see what we got. Spiritomb. Great, that's a ghost with a rock on it. Oh, that's Ghost and Dark. That's fine. How about Golurk? It's a haunted golem. It has to be... Oh, it's Ghost and Ground. Alright, that's fine. Now, what about... Runerigus. Come on, it's a tombstone. It has to be... Oh, come on! In the 30 years and 9 generations that Pokemon has been out for, we are still missing 9 type combinations. And some of these genuinely baffle me as why they haven't been made. I mean, seriously, how is there no Ghost and Rock type? Even though there are whole 9 combos out there that aren't being put to good use, half of them, rounded down, are half normal. Now, not to diss on the normal type, but they're kinda boring. He's right behind me, isn't he? To fill in all these cool and new radical type combos, I decided to make a handful of designs for my newest Pokemon project, Pokemon Frontier, inspired by the American Old West and Native American culture and folktales. So, with no further ado, let's get into it. The first type combo that caught my eye is Fairy and Ground. Well, technically it was Fairy and Fire, but we'll get there when we get there. Seeing as Fairy is one of the most mystical types in the game, really its only competition is Psychic and maybe Ghost, I wanted to kick this off with some mythology. In many Native American folktales, Coyote is constantly showing up as this trickster kind of character. He's usually pretty selfish and egotistical, with many of his plots only benefiting himself, but he isn't all bad and actually has a fair amount of stories where he helps people. Such as the specific myth that this Pokemon is based on, which, again, we'll get to it. So, a tricky character with mystical powers whose morals are... complicated. That sounds kinda like a Fae to me. So this little guy is a Fairy type, but it's also Ground. There's a whole lot of reasons why it's Ground type, one of which being the story where Coyote tried to make a creature out of clay, but failed because he was laughing too hard. But circling back to the Fairy bit, I have a question. How are magical powers often portrayed in a lot of cartoons and media? Well, it's with a big puff of smoke. It's a poof. Well, I could imagine that's exactly what this Pokemon does. Kind of. It would collect dust and roll around in its tail, and whenever it performs one of its fairy magics, it would slam its tail into the ground, releasing a large dust cloud into the air, which could also be used as a smokescreen to run away if it gets caught in the middle of one of its tricks. As for its design, I really wanted it to be pretty similar to Zorua or Nickit, being a sneaky little gremlin creature. However, to make sure it's different enough, I decided to curl its ears in to almost look like a devilish pair of horns to reference its tricky side. It would float around using fairy powers or whatever, so its pose is very light, and I gave it this upturned nose to reference Coyote's narcissistic side. This is Kanihi, the tricky wolf Pokemon, from Canine and Hihi, a Fairy and Ground type with the ability Hustle and the hidden ability Prankster. Kanihi are notorious tricksters, stealing or tricking other Pokemon to give them food. They seem to be able to float in the air, which it uses as yet another tool for its tricks. It is not recommended to keep one as a pet as they get dust and dirt everywhere. They take constant dust baths. This is not to clean themselves, but rather to create a dust cloud to escape when one of their tricks goes south. It gets bored if it is not constantly pulling pranks. They are extremely picky eaters and refuse to eat flavors they don't like. When it came to evolving Kanihi, I knew I wanted it to be akin to Grimmsnarl, being a pretty ugly fairy type. And while Kanihi is super cute, using that to maybe get away with its tricks, this evolution is going to be big and mean looking, relying on its cunning smarts to get away. Its design is fairly simple, basically just going for the look of a coyote with a big bushy tail. I turned the uptone nose of Kanihi into a crooked, scrunched up, almost broken looking nose that references some pop culture depictions of coyotes, such as Coyote from Looney Tunes. As for the particular myth that I mentioned this design takes inspiration from, I decided to go with the story of how Coyote stole fire for humanity. Basically, Coyote sees humans shivering in the harsh winter and decides he has to do something. So with the help of some animal friends, Coyote steals a burning branch from the fire spirits, though in some versions it's the sun itself, and gives it to humanity. That's also where the unused fairy fire type comes in, though it isn't quite fire fairy yet. That's right, this Pokemon is one with alternate forms. Its dry form is the one it takes after immediately being sent out for battle, still being ground and fairy, but it can change into its ignited form, which is fire and fairy. It's honestly baffling to me that fire fairy hasn't been used yet. After all, ceremonial and sacred flames are super widespread throughout a bunch of different cultures. Pokemon even has a move called Sacred Flame. Back to the myth of Coyote stealing fire. During the heist, Coyote's tail catches fire, and after the flames settle, it leaves a burnt, scarred white. To reference this Pokemon's tail somewhat resembles a crooked branch with a bunch of dried leaves on it, well known for being good kindling. I'm actually really proud of this design. I think it turned out exactly how I hoped it would, and I was able to cram in some pretty neat details into the drawing. One of my favorites is how the pink of the lower jaw comes up to be just a pattern on the face, goes past the eye, and transitions into the inside of the ear. I'm also quite fond of his little mohawk, though I can't say why. I'm also surprised at how well the pink and brown go together, not something I can say I expected. When Kanihi reaches level 38, it will evolve into Coyote, dry form, the bush wolf Pokemon, from Coyote and Tihi, a fairy and ground type with the ability Kindling. Coyote's fur is extremely dry, leading to it catching fire quite easily. While it keeps its prank-loving personality upon evolving, it is now more willing to help others it feels pity for. Don't be fooled though, it will not hesitate to trick and prank anyone and anything it sees. Its body is extremely light. This combined with its fairy powers allows it to skip and jump and run on thin air. Coyote will use this to leave no footprints behind while running heists, but it still enjoys rolling around in the dirt. Its thick fur is extremely flammable. The ability Kindling makes it so that when Coyote is hit by or uses a fire-type move, it will enter its ignited form. This also has a 20% chance of happening every turn in harsh sunlight. Its ignited form is fire and fairy instead, and on top of the type change, in this form it effectively has a built-in life orb, increasing its offenses at the cost of a little bit of HP every turn. However, if hit by a water, ground, or rock move, or if it's in the rain, Coyote will return to its dry form. On top of this, it cannot enter ignited form in the rain no matter what. Its tail is a burning white to reference both the whitetail Coyote got from the fire heist, but also odd color flames just feel more magical and special in my opinion. Next up on the chopping block is Ice and Poison. Unlike Fire and Fairy or Ghosted Rock, I can kinda see why this one hasn't been made yet. It just doesn't really make sense. I mean, for Fire and Fairy, there's sacred flames and magical flames and whatnot. For Ghost and Rock, there's tombstones and haunted statues, but the Venn diagram of Ice and Poison has very little overlap. I did end up finding something to use, though. In just about every stereotypical Western movie, something or some important scene happens inside a saloon. Well, what do you find inside a saloon? Alcohol. Specifically beer, wine, and most importantly for us, whiskey. Now, I'm not the most knowledgeable on alcohol, considering I cannot legally drink it, I'm 18, but according to a quick Google search, whiskey on the rocks means poured directly over ice. And since alcohol is often not too kind to your body, leaving all sorts of nasty things to your liver, I figured whiskey on the rocks is a pretty good candidate for an ice and poison type. That being said, if I wasn't making this specifically for the sake of making an unused type combo, I would have made this Pokemon a fire and water type, since whiskey is often referred to literally as fire water, for how it burns when it goes down. In fact, that's why On the Rocks is so popular, it makes it burn less. However, back in ye olden days, ice was pretty hard to come by, so many places didn't have it. But it's fine, this region is already going to be lacking in ice types pretty badly, so this works. Its body is, of course, a shot glass, but since its body is also made of ice, it also resembles those hollow ice cubes. You know what I'm talking about, right? These things. My grandparents had a machine that used to make them, and I would stick them to my tongue. One last little detail is that its eyes and mouth are X-shaped. With them all lined up, it resembles the classic X marking on a lot of cartoon alcohol. Overall, I'm pretty split on this design. I think it's pretty fun, but it's also a tad underwhelming. Definitely something Pokemon would never reference in a million years, but at the same time, Lopunny is a Playboy bunny, so anything could happen. Chilliver, the Dizzy Pokemon, from Chill, Shiver, and Liver, an Ice and Poison type with the ability Intoxicating. This Pokemon lives in cold, damp caves and only comes out at night where the sun doesn't threaten to melt their fragile bodies. They live in large communities and work together to collect juice from a specific berry to heal their sick. This juice is toxic to anyone else. Chilliver are popular with many saloon owners, as they can keep drinks cold within their bodies, but they must be careful as the drinks will go bad shortly after. In fact, many largely successful saloons have entire colonies of them in their basements. The ability Intoxicating makes all of the user's Poison-type moves deal super effective damage to Psychic types, referencing alcohol's effects on the mind. Now, before I get to the next unique type combo, I want to do a mono-type Pokemon that evolves into a unique type combo. So, the time of the Wild West, the mid to late 1800s, the second industrial revolution is going on, with one of the biggest and most notable technologies being introduced to America was the locomotive. It makes so many jobs easier, like deliveries and transportation, but trains are big. Like, really big. And in order to make something like that move, you need fuel. Thus enter coal. For energy, it's cheap, it burns hotter and is more concentrated than wood, and in today's age, it is absolutely mogged by nuclear in every single way. But I'm getting off topic. In a place like America, money is everything, so big corporations loved coal, mostly for how cheap it was. You know another thing that's really cheap that big corporations used to love, at least until it got outlawed? That's right! It's child labor. Kids were used in a lot of places in the Industrial Revolution, mostly because they didn't need to be paid much and their little arms and hands can get into little crevices. Fortunately, in 1938, the Fair Labor Standards Act under Franklin D. Roosevelt was signed, saying that children under the age of 14 could not be employed, and children between the ages of 14 and 16 were given limited hours. But that's history lesson over, you can wake up now. I'm sure at least one of you fell asleep during that. Anyways, for this design I wanted to reference that. In coal mines, just to be clear, I'm not condoning it. Again, this is another thing that Gamefreak would absolutely not have put in their games. Then again, they did reference Kangaskhan in literally their first generation. This little guy is just a big ol' lump of coal, covered with patterns that reference coal dust, with the ones on its legs looking like overalls and the little gold flakes resembling buttons on said overalls, and the big smear on his forehead looking like a headlamp. Speaking of, that big old darker segment on the top of the head is meant to look like both a mining helmet as well as the big bushy haircut of a lot of stereotypical rowdy children. Looking back, it honestly kind of looks like a regional form of Ralts. That's completely an accident. Here is Carbakid, the carbon Pokemon. From carbon, what coal is mostly made of, and Kid, a pure rock type with the abilities Flash Fire, Thermal Exchange, and Sturdy. This Pokemon prefers to live in deep, dark caves. They have an internal furnace that turns coal into energy. Because of this, they tend to predate a roly-poly. However, if it removes enough coal from the walls of its homes, the caves threaten collapse, forcing them to move. They tend to form groups of around 5 to 10 individuals at a time. Carbakid love to kick heavy rocks at Zubat and are protected from retaliation because of their thick, rocky helmet. They don't pick on anyone bigger than them, though. They love eating rocks, but coal is their favorite. Now to evolve it. Yeah, you all know where this is going. The unused type combo that includes rock is Rock and Ghost. Unfortunately, coal mining is an extremely dangerous job. Cave-ins, toxic gas, black lung, explosions, getting stuck in tight crevices. There are just so many ways a person can die down in the mines. In fact, the number of recorded fatalities from coal mines differs from source to source, but the number is in the thousands. Some sources even say that the number is higher than some wars. So this Pokemon is going to be a creepy-looking miner, with a big bald head, big shaggy beard, and giant hunchback with big strong arms. Those arms, however, are actually just the pre-evolution's legs, and the head is just an upside-down version of the pre-evolution's one. It's a bit morbid, but this whole line is a bit morbid. The gold buttons on Carbakid extend to become long fingers for this guy to pluck out precious rocks. or people's souls. It's meant to look like a pickaxe when they're spread out, especially with the little chunk taken out of the thumb looking like the blunt end of a pickaxe, while also referencing how many laborers in the Industrial Revolutions and Gilded Age are missing chunks of their fingers, lost during accidents. Sometimes their entire fingers, hands, or even arms can be lost if they're messed up enough. I'm honestly a big fan of how the lighting comes from the bottom rather than the top, a pretty common trend within Ghost-type Pokemon. One detail I really like about this guy is the one big soulless eye staring directly at the camera. He almost resembles ghosts who come back from the dead to warn others that if they keep going down their current path, they won't like the outcome. Think something akin to Jacob Marley from A Christmas Carol. And while I probably sound like I'm beating a dead horse saying that Gamefreak won't make something like this, they are fairly well known for being environmentalists, with Pokemon like Galarian and Corsola being a symbol for global warming, and Zygarde bringing balance to the ecosystem. This isn't the same thing as labor laws, but who knows, maybe they would. Phantasmal, the carbon spirit Pokemon, from Phantasmal, Coal, and Smog. A rock and ghost type with the abilities Flash Fire, Thermal Exchange, and Sturdy. Upon evolving, its body has become more fragile, meaning coal is no longer enough to sustain it. Now, it preys upon any rock Pokemon it can find and plucks out their souls to consume, leaving an empty husk. They seem to only be driven by hunger. It is highly advised that inexperienced trainers do not train Phantasmal, as they can be extremely difficult to keep in check. They use their long golden fingers to pull the soul of a Pokemon directly from their body. Fortunately, they are rarely seen in the wild. Now let's move on to a more light-hearted one. After that, Bug and Dragon is the last unused type. That isn't normal, and it's a fan favorite. And it's pretty easy to see why. Everyone likes dragons, and bugs are cool. Bug and Dragon are also complete opposites on the type chart, with bugs being the weakest and dragons being the strongest. So having both is kinda contradictory. There is a lot of ways to go about a bug and dragon type, most notably a dragonfly, but I have other plans for that. Instead, I went back to Native American stories while I found one about the Bee King and the Snake's daughters from Iowa folklore. Basically, there lived an old witch who had a snake for a husband, and I just want to put this out there, the place I read this story literally said that her snake husband was too good for her. I just think that's really funny. Anyways, back to the story. There lived a witch who had a snake for a husband. This yucky couple eventually had 2 daughters, who each had the face of a beautiful woman but the cold, scaly body of a snake. Anytime either of them tried to get in a relationship with a human man, he would see her body and scream and run in fear. Eventually, like their mother, each of them married snakes. Because of their hatred for humans, they would kill anyone who got too close to their home. Well, one day, the Bee King was flying near their home and the daughters tried to kill him, but their weapons failed. Eventually, the Bee King defeated them by turning them into stone. Pretty cool. For this design, I wanted to combine the daughters and the Bee King together, with the snaky daughters providing the dragon type and the Bee King providing the bug. I would have made this a new Pokemon entirely, but I wanted to make it a regional form. There's already a couple of real bee Pokemon, Beedrill, Vespiquen, etc., but I decided on Ribombee. Why Ribombee? Because I like Ribombee. I even have a plush of her. Now, before you go to the comments to complain, yes, I know that Ribombee is a bee fly, which are not technically bees, but I do not care. I do think it's a good reason for it to be Ribombee, though, which is that the Snake Daughter's weapon of choice is a bow, and a bow could also be used to describe a ribbon. Ribombee. As for the design, it's really just a more confident, more wild or ferocious Ribombee. Its wings are ripped and torn, but it also looks like the head of a dragon, and the scarf ends look like the head of a snake, to reference the daughter's heritage. This also ties in the idea of mimicry, where a small and weak creature pretends to be something much larger and intimidating. In this case, it's a little bee pretending to be a big, strong dragon. Except she is a dragon, and will mess you up. I messed around with the colors for a bit, but I eventually decided on this purple color for the collar, both because a purple or indigo is the dragon color in Pokemon, but also because in many cultures, purple is the color of royalty, referencing the Bee King. Overall, I think this is a pretty effective design, and I like it a lot. Although that might also just be because I like Ribombee a lot. Also, yes, there will be a regional cutie fly, but this video is already long enough. Here is Rabombi. This region doesn't have a name yet, so right now it's just Rabombi. A bug and dragon type with the abilities Intimidating, Shield Dust, and the hidden ability Rivalry. This variant of Rabombi has adapted to more unforgiving predators in competition, making it more ruthless and gain the dragon type. Despite its petite-looking body, it will not hesitate to cut down its foes. It particularly enjoys taking down other dragon-type Pokemon. A more confident and ferocious Rabombi, this Pokemon loves picking fights with the biggest and strongest dragon Pokemon it can find. Even if it is defeated, its determination remains unwavering. It still continues to make pollen puffs for its family, however. And there you have it! This was a super fun video, and the designs I made here are among my favorites. So, let me know which ones are your favorites. Also, if you enjoyed, consider subscribing. I make a whole lot more Fakemon stuff, and I want to get to 5,000 subs by the end of the year. But that's all from me. See ya!